A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, recently asked me a question, and I actually thought it was a really good question. And he was talking, I was trying to convince him to get into studying Greek and to learn Greek. Because from my context, that's something I'm really passionate about. New Testament Greek, that is. And I was trying to persuade him to get into Greek. And he brought up something. He said, well, how long does it take to become proficient in Greek? And, the answer to that may vary. It's really highly, contextual because, or subjective is rather the word I'm looking for, or context by context, which is that some people might learn faster than others. But his point being was that he goes, well, listen, if we have so many good English translations, wouldn't I be better off simply studying those English translations than spending that time trying to learn Greek when there's a possibility that I'll never master the language? And I think that's actually a very fair question. So, again, I actually reached out to a close friend of mine named Darryl Burling of Biblical Mastery Academy, and I asked him this question. So, if we have so many good English translations, then really what's the point of learning Greek? So go ahead and watch this clip from Darryl, and I'll comment after it's done. So
that brings me to the second question, which is, if there are so many really good translations out there, why should I bother to learn Greek? Well, we have the same kind of problem. If you go back and you look at a good literal translation, and in this bucket, let's just throw a few translations into this bucket. This would include, say, the New American Standard, maybe the King James or New King James, the English Standard Version, maybe one or two others, ESV perhaps, we'll throw in there as well. So those are good kind of fairly literal translations. They do a pretty good job of representing the original text close to the original wording and so on of the Greek. But even if you look at these translations, you will find that there's going to be different ways of wording things, different translations, different usages of different words to substitute one another. One will use, for instance, the word doulos. Is it slave or bondservant? How do the different translations handle that differently? Or which one is right? And that's where you get stuck, because unless you know Greek, you can't understand why the translations have chosen to translate the word the way they have. And here's the thing, you don't learn Greek in order to create a better translation. I think a lot of people think that if you know Greek, you don't need a translation because you can do something better. Well, in a sense, that's true, because you just don't need a translation. You can see what the text is saying for yourself, and because you have a good enough understanding of the Greek language, you don't need to translate it as much. You can sort of work directly with what's written there. However, the other benefit really that comes from learning Greek is that you can understand why those different translations have translated it slightly differently. Because there will be a reason why the ESV renders something different to the New American Standard, which is different to the Legacy Standard Bible, which is different to the NIV or whatever translation. And each of them will have a reason for doing it. Translation committees will spend hours talking about many of these changes. And so they're not doing them accidentally. They've actually got a reason for it. And if you know Greek, if you understand the language, you can actually see the nuance of the language that they're trying to bring out, and if that's valid or not. If that's valid in this context or not. And so you start to see why translations are written the way they're written. The other thing too is that, bear in mind, the translations are written for different target audiences. So the Legacy Standard Bible, the New American Standard Bible is writing for a year 13 reading level, which is someone who's in 16, 17 years old. So that's the reading level they're aiming for. Whereas someone reading, say, a TNIV or the Holman Christian Standard Bible is being written for someone who's, say, 9 years old. So that kind of reading level. So these are different outcomes that they're aiming for, different target audiences, and that then makes a change to the way they will render things from Greek and Hebrew into English as well. And of course, you don't know why they've made those changes if you are working just with translation. So there's really good reasons to spend the time to work through the original languages. And another one I would add here is that your knowledge of the Bible is very heavily structured by your knowledge of your English Bible. And the problem with the English Bible is that it's a pretty recent kind of addition to church history. So the English Bible was first written or translated from Greek and Hebrew into English in the 1520s by William Tyndale. His first edition came out in 1526, and so from there you end up having the English language now has been adapted, if you like, to cater for the New Testament. And of course, updated translations in the 21st century, 20th century, and so on, they were all going to reflect the way language was at that time. And that means that you will often miss things because our language represents our culture. And if our culture is different to that culture from years ago, you can guarantee that the way something was written years ago is now going to be very different potentially from the way we would word something today, because we don't have some of those cultural issues, like for instance honor, the way you think about family, parents, patriarchy, things like patronage even. So these are things that we don't even have in our culture, our Western culture at least today, like we do in other parts of the world. So when we read our English Bible, we read the assumptions of our culture into the New Testament and Old Testament through our language. When you go to the original languages, you have to deal with their cultural assumptions in their language. And so that takes you out of our own culture and helps us to see how the Bible was written for the original audience. So instantly, you're out of your 21st century cultural mindset and you're right into the meaning as it was understood or intended to be understood by first century or earlier readers of that text. So that would be a key thing, a couple of key reasons I reckon it's worth taking your time to read Greek or learn to read and study Greek. I would add to that though, that I don't think that everybody needs to learn to read Greek. I would like to see more of the church learn to read Greek. I think that anybody who will undertake this process and commit themselves to it will benefit from it if they undertake that process, and will benefit significantly. I think you will not know your Bible as well now as you could knowing either of the original languages, because those original languages will just challenge the way you think about the scriptures, and that will take you deeper and give you a deeper understanding of the text. And so that's one of the things we do at Biblical Mastery Academy. We really try to encourage people not just to read and study the New Testament, but really to understand the background and history of the text itself as well. So I hope there's some helpful reasons to consider learning to read Greek and perhaps Hebrew as well, or instead perhaps as well might be better. Greek is, I think, where everybody should start. So I hope that's good. I hope that's helpful. I look forward to helping again in the future. We'll see you then.
So thanks, Darryl, for making that video for me. You know, guys, if you really want to check out, if you're ever interested in learning Greek, I recommend you check out Biblical Mastery Academy. They have some fantastic stuff. But there's actually something really cool in particular that BMA or Darryl Burling, he offers. And it's something that I've been working with him on. So he designed it, but one of the most common questions I get from people is very similar to the whole topic of this video, which is they want to learn Greek, but they don't want to necessarily invest the time that it takes, or they're not sure they can invest the time that it takes to learn it completely, right? Rather, what they would choose to know, if they could, is that what are the basic, how does the Greek language work in a nutshell, and how to maybe use tools to better do deeper Bible study. Well, this is where actually Darryl Burling comes in. So I was telling him that because a lot of people have asked me about that, including some close friends, and they don't want to invest the time to learn Greek, but they would like to know how to use the tools. And so Darryl told me that they actually have a program, and I'll put a link below, for people who are interested in trying to just dip their toe in the language. And so in this course, it's a course, he'll teach you how to do, how to basically sound out. You'll learn the alphabet. You'll learn how to read Greek words, right? So you don't have to read the transliterated version, but you could look at a Greek word and at least be able to sound it out, as well as how to use basic tools in order to properly do word studies. And so at any rate, what I said was that Darryl, he reached out to me and I'd asked him about this, and he's provided generously a program that you guys can use just for that purpose. So I'll put a link down below if you guys want to check that out. If you're someone who's ever been curious about learning Greek but doesn't know if they want to invest the time, this would be a fantastic way for you to start. And by the end of it, you will be able to do basic exegesis of passages using doing word studies with tools without having to go through all the effort of actually learning Greek to a fluency, right? So if that's you, if you've ever been interested in learning that, definitely check out this program from Darryl Burling. At any rate, I hope this helped you guys out. So God bless you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.